Gosh, you did such a nice job on that podcast, especially editing some of the stuff, some of my mistakes. Could you do that for me? I wish you could do that for me right now. That would be really nice. But I wanted to obviously talk about writing, but first I wanted to thank Bob and Lorelei for inviting me here. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here. But I did want to talk about, maybe pass on some tips, hopefully they'll be useful, that maybe I and Mary learned when we wrote our book. Writing a book or any other project of writing. I always laugh when somebody says, you know, writing is my gift, it comes so easily to me. Well, I'm glad it does for you, because for me, it's more like sweating blood. But I did want to talk about that. And as far as writing, I consider writing, all forms of writing, I take it seriously, including Facebook posts. If you're an engineer, it's important that you communicate your ideas, or if you're a nurse. In fact, I have a very good friend of mine who's studying for his PhD in engineering, and I'm helping him with his treatise. I have no idea what he's writing, but I'm helping. I don't know what we're saying, but I'm helping him somehow. It's odd that when you don't understand the subject, but you're still working on the grammar. I've never been in that position, but at any rate, for me, something that's important because of my relationship with Jay Leno, I co-produced the Tonight Show with Jay Leno for about 20 years, is the importance of humor. I guess that's my specialty. When I appear on radio and TV shows, it's always talking about the contemporary and current hosts, and I'm afraid I don't have a lot of positive to say about the state of humor today. It's almost as if humor has died, and it was murdered by political correctness. And it really does concern me. But the purpose of humor, I always felt, as it portrayed by Johnny Carson and Jay Leno, and to some extent David Letterman, and people like that, is humor is supposed to be bringing us together. And I think my best example of this, and perhaps some of you can relate to this story, is when I was a kid growing up. Johnny Carson, of course, was the late night host at the time, the only one at the time. And when you were a kid, you couldn't watch Johnny Carson, at least when I was growing up, because he was on late at night. So one day, my dad said, would you like to watch Johnny Carson with your mom and me? And I thought, oh my gosh, Johnny Carson, I get this, because I'd be in bed and I'd hear them laughing at his jokes. And so the fact that my dad asked me to come in and watch the Johnny Carson show was essentially a rite of passage. And I remember watching it the first time, and I didn't understand half the jokes. But I saw it when my dad laughed and when my mom laughed, so I laughed. And to let them know, look, I have a right to be in here. I should be in here. I should have this rite of passage. But that was a special time, and then to sort of end up years later, I worked at NBC News in Burbank before I went to the Tonight Show, but during that time, I was there for about 10 years before I went and worked for Jay. During that time, Johnny Carson was still on the air, and honestly, when he walked down the corridor and he would walk by you, and I didn't know whether to bow down or what. And then later to have the opportunity to actually work for that show, it was extraordinary. And I want to circle back to that, but first I thought we could maybe go through some ideas, maybe some useful tips. We'll see if they're useful, as to the writing process for whatever project that you're working on. Then we can circle back to stories if you want. You can ask me any question anytime. But one of the, we worked on this book, I don't know, how many years, Mary? A long time. It felt like a long time. And I think we did a pretty good job. But anyway, here are some ideas that grew out of that process. And this first one I have is, how do you know when you have a good idea for a book or a project? Whatever your project is, how do you know? Well, I wish I had a really good answer, because the fact is, you don't ever know. You don't know what's going to sell. And I'm sure, Luann, when you look at songs or write songs and you're putting together a CD, should I go with this song or that song? You don't really know. You don't know what's going to connect. But your idea has to be unique, and you have to believe in it. That's all I can say. Otherwise, there's no magic formula. I mean, if you look at television shows, about 95% of them fail. It's tough out there. So you have to sort of have something that you really believe in. And then I recommend for you, if you're doing a book or something like that, again, I know there's a whole variety of projects here, but for me, I felt like I needed to get a literary agent. That was important. And a literary agent who believed in the project that we had. Now, if you feel strongly enough about an idea, you feel that strongly and you say it's unique and I've got to go for it, then go the self-publishing route. But you do have to understand you're most likely not going to make any money if you do self-publishing. And I heard earlier, you know, it's nice when you make money on a project. We were talking about that. But if you're really passionate and you really want to carry out that idea, I say go for it, but understand you're probably not going to make any money, right? But again, passion, being passionate about something is very important. So, if you are passionate and you have a unique idea, then you will essentially be inoculated. You will be inoculated to the word no. Because everyone is going to tell you that your book, your project, your play, your song, your poem, just doesn't have a chance. And believe me, how many times did we hear no, Mary? And honestly, we were passionate. We knew we had an idea that was going to work. We knew we had an idea that would work. And we essentially went through, here's the thing. Every publisher in New York, every major publisher said, yeah, we want to look at your manuscript. And almost everyone said, no, you're not a known author, so we can't rely on you as a known author. So we need some dirt. We need some more dirt in the book. I said, that's not my vision. I'm not gonna, I'm too old to tell nasty stories about people. I'm not gonna do it. That wasn't part of our vision, but it was difficult. It was very difficult to stick to that. Goal, especially when you have Random House saying, we're really interested, just put some dirt in it. So it's not an easy process. And the other thing is, I knew they were turning me down for the wrong reasons. They also said that I was an unknown and I couldn't get any coverage in the media. And media coverage, whatever it is very important to selling your project. You basically have to become a self-promoter, and which is difficult for many people. But they said, well, you're an unknown now author, so we know you won't be able to get any media coverage. I think so far I've done about, 700 interviews, Mary? Worldwide, I think. And I told them at the time, I said, you don't understand, I'm the guy that brought all of these talk show hosts on cable television. I brought them to late night television. I brought Bill O'Reilly to late night television. I brought all of the news anchors to late night television. I brought all of those people to television. I'm friends with them. They will return the favor to me. And they still didn't buy it. I had a vision, I had everything, and they still said, no, we don't think you have what it takes. So the process can be very difficult. And for me, I went into it thinking that it wouldn't be difficult, because the person who actually inspired me to write this book, because I didn't want to write the book, I thought it was Jay Leno's to write. The person who inspired me to do it was Bill O'Reilly. And because I had formed a relationship with him, as well as quite a number of other people, but Bill said, you know, you have so many wonderful stories, you should put it in a book. And I said, no. And this went on for like 3 years. He said, you should write a book. And I said, I don't, it's really Jay's. He said, Jay's not gonna write a book. You know he's not gonna write it. I know he's not gonna write it. He said, here's the thing. You write, you know, your treatise, and I'll take it to my publisher. I thought, oh, well, maybe writing a book isn't gonna be so hard. Bill O'Reilly's gonna take my book and take it to his publisher? Henry Holt? Wow. I didn't know this was so easy. Well, he took my idea, my book, to his publisher, and they said no. So if Bill O'Reilly, who at that time was the best-selling author in the world, whatever you think of Bill, whether you like him or you don't, at that time he was the best-selling author in the world, and he couldn't get my book published. So it's a difficult process. We finally ended up with a publisher, and it worked out. But you know, that's how it goes. Also, sometimes you have to make really difficult decisions when you're writing. For instance, the first literary agent that we had, I actually fired our first literary agent. He happened to be a very good friend of mine, and fortunately he still is a good friend. And he had an excellent track record. I don't know if you remember a story called The Shack, okay, which was made into a film. That was actually a self-published story at first. And this agent was able to say, wait, there's something to this story. We're gonna take this. And most of us in here know how successful it was. That's just one example of the work that this agent had done. He lives in Nashville, and he's actually legendary in Nashville. But for some reason, he's at a point in his life where, you know, spending time with his grandkids is more important than pitching my book, which I get. I have a grandson, I get it. But at a certain point, and he told me, he said, this won't be hard at all. We'll get you a publisher right away. Well, it wasn't happening, and I had to fire him, so it's tough. Sometimes you have to make those decisions. Fortunately, he's a wonderful man, and we talked about it, and we were able to work it out, and we're still friends. I also wanted to talk about the writing process itself. I don't know about you, but when I hear someone say, I'm gonna get my creative juices flowing, that's, I'll say BS, and won't go beyond that. I don't even know what that means. I don't know what getting creative juices flowing. It might work for you. I don't want to criticize you if that works for you. But to me, that creative stuff accounts for about 1% of the process. If you want to get something done, a project done, you have to set up a daily schedule with a start time, a finish time, and how many pages you're going to do. Otherwise, it's just not going to work. And you know, also, I had come from the world of television, entertainment, and before that, news. So I was accustomed to a deadline. At the end of every day, there was always a show, and you had to have your material finished in time for the show. So I was accustomed to that. So now I'm living a lifestyle where and it's also a collaborative process. Now I have a lifestyle where I'm in my office, I'm by myself, there's no deadline, and how much writing do you think I was getting done? So my wife, Mary, who's right there behind Luann, was a teacher at the time, And she was seeing what was going on, and she came in to me and she said, okay, how many pages are you gonna have for me today? And I said, well, honey, you don't understand. This is not a writing day for me, it's a research day. I'm doing research today. And she said, really? How long were you with the show? I think it was 20 years. You're gonna be writing, you're gonna give me 6 pages, I'll be home at 3. Right? That gave me a deadline, right? I needed that. I needed that because I need a deadline. And she knew that. So, the other thing about writing, and this applies to all writing, including emails, including Facebook posts, is you're not that great. I'm not that great to write through something and just post it, right? You have to write, rewrite, then rewrite again, then rewrite again. There's one chapter in this book about a guy who to this day is a pretty close personal friend. His name is Dennis Rodman. And I wrote a chapter about him in this book. It actually was the first chapter I wrote. And Dennis is an interesting and complex person, and I had an interesting experience with Dennis. It was happened to be in Nashville, Tennessee. It's and I won't go into it, Mary, because you know I'll take an hour, and so I won't go into the whole story. But the fact is, I wanted to tell that chapter right, and so I rewrote that chapter 25 times. Now I'm a little obsessive, right? And maybe I'm not saying you have to rewrite everything 25 times, but it's so important to rewrite. And here I am telling you, I don't like it when people do emails and there's all kinds of grammatical errors. I can't even understand what they're doing. I especially don't like it when I end up doing it. Right? Even when you send out an email, you gotta go, I rewrite my emails a lot of times. And we all should. But now, having said all that, I will say that we should not aim for perfection. At a certain point when you're writing, I think you have to say, okay, enough, I have to walk away. Because you know what? After I rewrote that chapter 25 times, I was still ready to keep going. Right? But it was Winston Churchill who said, when you're doing a writing project, and he of course was one of the greatest writers ever, he said, you never finish any project, you have to kill it. So, the other thing is, writing is not a solo act. Very few ideas that you have are sacrosanct. They can all be improved. All ideas can be improved. And so I say, ask others for ideas. And not just professional, ask everybody for ideas, suggestions, friends, spouses. I was surrounded by a wonderful team. It included not only Mary, but her sisters, lots of friends of mine. Honestly, I would, over the years, at dinner parties and stuff, I would tell little anecdotes about what was going on at the Tonight Show, and I would get, if people laughed, I'd go, oh, okay, this resonates. Everybody's laughing at this idea. This other idea, they're talking over me, okay, that's not resonating. And it's one of the reasons that Jay Leno would always, even during his heyday at the Tonight Show, he was out doing stand-up appearances, about 150 a year. And what he was doing is going out and testing material. He would be trying out jokes, constantly doing that. So, as I said, when we did my book, we had numerous ideas that we ran by people with all diverse backgrounds. And when you test your material, when you do that sort of thing, you find out what resonates and what doesn't. And the third thing I wanted to talk about, as far as the writing process, is getting coverage, media coverage. And a good example of it is the podcast that I did with Luann I would say podcasts are the fastest rising star, I think, in media, wouldn't you say? Steve, the podcasts are really coming into their own, but it's very important to, I guess, say, you know, be a self-promoter, go out there and do media. And here are some things. If you're lucky enough to have a publisher, don't expect your publisher to do the work of getting you in the media. Because if you have a publisher, they focus on their celebrity writers. That's who they look at. So take it upon yourself. And in our case, we ended up, because of the many contacts we had, we also hired a publicist who had, you know, knew people who we didn't, so, which really helped. And again, because of my contacts in the media, I was able to end up getting on, you know, on Bill O'Reilly's show. I was able to get on Chris Matthews' show on MSNBC. I was able to do all of that. And honestly, you sell more books through media interviews and that sort of thing, and making appearances than by going to bookstores. That's sort of a traditional way of doing things. Unless you're lucky enough to get invited to Powell's bookstore in Portland, which is, I don't know, could be the most famous bookstore in the world at this point. But and it's a great bookstore. And don't turn down bookstores, but there are all kinds of other ways to promote your book. And don't limit yourself to the types of media. I've done interviews on the biggest cable shows to the smallest radio stations in North Dakota. I've done interviews with all kinds of publications, from the biggest newspapers to the smallest. I've appeared on, at the beginning, I said, you know, I'm gonna do Bill O'Reilly and I'm gonna do my friends in cable TV, but I'm not gonna do those left-wing shows. I'm not doing that. And you know, truth is, I'm a conservative, I'll just say it up front. But, and I'm not talking politics here, but Mary said, yes, you are. You're gonna do everybody's show, whether you agree with them or not, you do everybody's show. And I did, and they all treated me very decently and fairly, and I'm glad I did it, and I suggest to you, you go through any door you can. I've done countless entertainment shows, Access Hollywood, all kinds of, pretty much everything. And again, don't forget about podcasts. Again, an increasingly important role in media. The one thing that I didn't do is I wouldn't do interviews that were, you know, all videotaped, because I knew they could edit my words in such a way. I trust Luann, right? But if I'm doing, what was the big one that was insisting that I do their show? Was it Entertainment Tonight? I said no to. And my publisher said, you're crazy. You're doing Entertainment Tonight. I said, no, I'm not. I'm not doing Entertainment Tonight because I used to be a news producer, and I used to do to people what they're gonna do to me. So I'm not doing that. Just a suggestion, once you're booked on a show, you have to understand that the interview is not gonna be about your poem, your book, your project. It's not your show, it's somebody else's show. And the last show I did was Luann's. It was her show, her questions. And in every case, the host is always kind enough, and certainly Luann was, to promote my book. So you have to keep that in mind. And I didn't when I first went out. I had sort of written out all my answers. And so when someone asked me a question, or they didn't ask quite the question I wanted, I would just sort of answer my question anyway, and that's not how you do it. It's somebody else's show. And, you know, and sometimes people never end up asking you a question. Who's, oh God, it's Hannity. Sean Hannity never asks a question. He just, he says something, and then he says something else, and then and it's like, are you gonna get to a question? In that case, you just sort of just start talking, and then he can react to you. But, so what else? And when you do media, you have to bring something to the table. In my case, when I do interviews, I'm sort of portrayed as the late night expert. So I'll discuss the latest jokes and material that I see on late night shows, as well as my thoughts about late night television and humor and that sort of thing. That's what I bring to the table. Another possibility, and I can't emphasize this enough, are service clubs. There are lots of service clubs. I think Mary made a remark. I think we spoke to a Rotary Club once. And Mary said, how did that go? And I said, really? I said, well, she said, that's really good because there's 88 Rotary Clubs in Los Angeles County. So they're very important. They have, and they're very important in their communities too. But they're always looking for speakers. So that's another idea. And those are my tips on writing. Hopefully there might be some gem that might be of use to you. Now I'm going to go ahead and keep talking about the writing process and about my experiences at The Tonight Show, but I'm happy to take any questions. Otherwise I'll just jump in. Yeah.
I'm afraid this might be a long answer and that's why you skipped it, but how did you eventually find a publisher?
Yes. That's actually a very good question, and I am glad you asked it, because we ended up finding the publisher ourselves. Right now, we had a literary agent who was very good at going over contracts. I think he had went to Yale Law School. But we actually found it ourselves through a friend of mine who was a published author. Which brings me to the point, don't discount what you can do. We had a literary agent, I'm glad we did, but he didn't find us the publisher. I mean, he went through all the publishers in New York and it was finally, okay, I'm not changing the book, I'm not changing the way I'm doing the book. And this was, I would say, a medium-sized publisher. I think it's fair to say medium-sized. And honestly, they made some mistakes. They made some really dumb mistakes. But you didn't want a long answer, so. But don't discount what you can do, right? If you're reading a book and you go, oh, this looks interesting. Whenever I see a book, the first thing I do is I look up and see, who's the publisher? So.
What do you think made these people say yes after all those no's? Do you think you know what it was that did it? I mean, you had a lot of no's before you had a yes.
I did. I think maybe why do you think they said yes, Mary? Why did they say yes?
Oh, the publisher?
Yeah.
Because they had never done a book like yours before.
They had done a lot of different genres, and I think they thought, wow, this is like celebrities. They had not done this type of genre. And I had actually made the case that, look, I can get on NBC News, I can get on the Today Show, I can get on the Today Show in Australia, and they actually believe me, right? And I did. I mean, I delivered. Now, not everybody's going to be able to do that. You do what you can, but I do think that we offered something they had not done the genre that I was offering them. Just wear people down. Which I'm uncomfortable with. Let's see, I'll go to you.
Okay.
Is it,
you
Dacia?
talked
Deja?
Yeah, thanks. You talk a little bit about podcasts and transcripts, I think. I'm hearing them too. So I am very interested in how you handle getting transcripts out to people who want to hear a podcast, but can't hear them.
Oh, so yours is a very specific question for hearing impaired people. Right. Do you have any insight into that, Luann?
No.
Mary, do you? My wife is hearing
I
impaired.
didn't hear her question.
Because she's hearing impaired.
Oh, I love it.
Getting transcripts to podcasts. I'm sorry, I'm not an expert in that.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. Yeah.
How much collaboration went into one joke?
Oh, yes. That's a very good question. Television, by its very nature, television writing is a collaborative process. And Jay Leno is a very collaborative kind of guy. And pretty much his lifestyle, his role on The Tonight Show, behind the scenes, were the monologue jokes. That's where he placed 100% of his attention. My role on The Tonight Show was booking the guests and producing their segments. So, although I have written a number of jokes for Jay, but the way it works is there are about, and this is true of all late night shows, there were about 20 writers. And each one turned out about 100 jokes a day. And Jay would end up with, I don't know, 1,500 jokes in his hand. And he would edit that down to 24 jokes. He would spend the whole day. Again, it's collaborative because the writers wrote it. You would go in the writer's room and come up with ideas. The writers and producers actually sat in the same room every day and gave each other ideas for jokes and guests. So it was there. Then you have the 20 writers doing the jokes. And then the other part of the collaborative process is that Jay, this is what Jay's day, this is what your day is like if you work there. If you're really busy, don't walk past Jay's office because he'll call you in and say, can I run 5 jokes by you? Right? He's testing his jokes all the time. All the time. And in my case, he would seek me out because I was known as, I don't know, the conservative on the show, right? The stick in the mud, the boring guy. So he would say, let me run this joke by you. I don't know if it's going to fly in Omaha. Or I don't know if it's going to fly in Lamar's. So it's an extremely collaborative process. And by the way, he would spend all day doing this process, and when I say that, I mean he would go to bed at 3 a.m. and he would get up at 6 a.m. and start in on the monologue jokes and go into work and work on the monologue jokes and go home at 6 p.m. And well, here's what he would do that. And he, by the way, I'm gonna expand on this because it's kind of a fun answer. Jay was the sort of guy that did the same thing every day. Everybody may know that he would wear blue jeans and denim shirt. He would go in. That's what he wears all the time. But other things about Jay is he eats the same lunch every day. He'll have like one, or he'll eat a certain lunch for like a year. He'll eat chicken for a year, and then he'll switch over to turkey the next year, and then he'll go to hamburgers for a year. He doesn't eat vegetables. He, every night, has lasagna. Every night, that's what he has. He doesn't have any investments in the stock market. If something happens, like for instance, maybe you remember the great Northridge earthquake from 1994. It's kind of a defining moment for those of us in Santa Clarita. But a lot of things got knocked to the ground, and Jay had a big board in his room where he would write jokes and write ideas, and the board fell down, or half of it fell down. So it was in his office in a diagonal way. He wouldn't change that board. It stayed there for 20 years. It just stayed there like that. So why did Jay do that? Why was he like that? I mean, he was incredibly eccentric. The other thing he would do is, just before he went out on stage, the props guy, his name was Joey Drago. Joey had a cold cup of water for Jay. Not that Jay needed the cold cup of water, but he gave Jay that cup of water before he went out to do the show every night. And while Jay was backstage, before he went out, he would write weird stuff with his finger on the board. Remember the story about Jesus writing something in the sand? It was like, what is he writing, you know? But that was just a little ritual that he did. People in show business and sports are the most superstitious in the world. But he would do that. And why did he do that? Why did he have that lifestyle? He did not want anything to get in the way of his monologue. He felt if he took 30 seconds to pick a wardrobe, that was 30 seconds too much. So he would just put on, denim shirt and jeans. And if he had to sort of sit there and decide for a half hour what he was going to have for lunch, why, then he wouldn't be going through monologue jokes. So it's a very collaborative process. It's also a very bizarre process for Jay, but it worked. It worked. Yeah. Well, let me try. I'll come back to you, but she hasn't asked.
Who cooks that lasagna?
Was it frozen?
No, every night,
He does it.
He does it?
Yeah. Yeah. And by the way, if you go to his garage, Jay Leno's garage,
All them cars.
he has a state-of-the-art kitchen in there.
Oh,
Martha, what's her name? Martha Stewart. She interviewed him, and he made lasagna for her in his state-of-the-art kitchen, and he used somebody that's mechanically oriented. What's it called when you have a press, a pressure? It had hydraulic press, 30,000-pound hydraulic press, and he used that to crush the garlic. For Martha. Anyway, Martha enjoyed the meal and the whole process, but you can go into his garage, and it's you could actually eat off the floor. It's so clean. It's such a wonderful experience. I don't know if I answered your question, but he makes his own lasagna. So, and by the way, when he rarely goes out, but when he does, he goes to an Italian restaurant. Only in Italy. Yeah.
Didn't you go on Jade's show,
Okay.
and if you didn't, why not?
I'm not big enough.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just not. I appeared in numerous comedy sketches.
He did do what's the internet? Jay wrote the forward for you.
Yeah, no, she was asking if I ever appeared on the show, but he was kind enough to write the foreword for the book, so I'm okay with that. No, but the thing is, you can't, the thing about The Tonight Show is you can't go on a show like that unless you're an A-level guest. And that's why it was always horrible if somebody would cancel the day of. Right? Because you can't just say, oh, I know a guy that does some good jokes. He's pretty good, and he's 2 blocks away. You can't do that. So, yeah. Yes?
So I want to ask you, as an author, a lot of us are introverts.
Yes.
And
Yeah. Right. That's right. That's why you're an author. Yeah.
prepare for public speaking.
Yes.
What you're doing.
Yes.
With signings, podcasts,
Yeah.
things that you're mentioning. So how would you recommend we prepare
Yes.
for speaking?
Trial by fire. It's very unnerving. I get nervous every time. I just get nervous, and I don't know about you, Luann, but for any public appearance, but like next Wednesday, I'm playing with Bob Everhart, and it's the same thing we did last year. You booked us here, and he's got this project he's doing for the Smithsonian. Well, I already played with him last year on it, but I'm sweating bullets, like, oh, I hope I can do this, you know? And I don't know if you get nervous with every appearance you make, I'm not sure. I know I do. No?
Not really.
Not really? Okay. Everybody's different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I trained myself, though,
Yeah,
to not be nervous.
yeah. Well, I'm a little more like she is. You're a performer. I'm not a performer. I mean, I play an instrument, but I'm not a natural performer. So it's just trial by fire. Yeah, and you know what that means? Standing in the living room looking at yourself in the mirror and recording yourself. I don't either. It's very uncomfortable, really uncomfortable. Especially if, like Mary would say, well, let me see what you got, you know, and you're just doing it for one person who's your toughest critic. It's only trial by fire. There's no magic bullet, you know? Sorry. Yeah.
I'm an author too, and sometimes spreading the word out about the book can be real pain in the butt.
Sometimes what?
Spreading the word about the book is a pain in the butt, though. So it's like, you know, with you're saying that, you know, going on podcasts, how do you get into doing stuff like that to try and spread it out? Is it easy? Is it difficult?
Well, I always say, first of all, I always say you have to be a self-promoter, which is very difficult. What is your name? It's probably hard for you too, because you said you're shy. And are you shy too?
No, I'm not shy.
Okay. You know what? You don't look shy, yeah. But especially if you're shy and you, like for instance, my pastor has a book out and I'm trying to help him out, right? But he's a pastor and he goes, I said, why don't you check on this? And he goes, well, I can't do that. It looks like I'm promoting myself, right? Right? You're supposed to be humble, remember? You're supposed to be humble. So I'm helping him promote stuff, but it's very difficult because you don't want to act like you're bragging and you don't want to be annoying. But the only advice I have is I have found that things always happen when you go places. And I don't know if that makes any sense at all, but if, like coming here, you don't know what's going to happen out of this, right? Or when I met Luann that year, honestly, Bob Everhart, who organized the event, a very dear friend of mine, I used to play in his band for a year, but I did not want to fly to Sioux City. I mean, if you don't know anything about getting to Sioux City, it's an 8-hour flight. It took us less time to fly to the French Polynesian Islands than to fly to Sioux City. Yeah.
We've got just a few minutes left.
Okay.
And so I thought you might want to finish with the story of our president.
Which one?
The present, Donald J. Trump.
Oh, that one. Yeah, the one that everybody probably loves in here. Yeah.
We have just a few minutes until break, but then
Okay.
after break, we'll
Yeah,
have
that's
another
true.
30 minutes.
Okay.
Don't give it all away.
I can tell the one about Donald Trump, but I wanted to get back to your question. The fact is, I did go to Sioux City. Well, first of all, because Bob was nice enough to ask me to come out and MC it, and it sounded like a lot of fun, but it was a pain in the butt to get out there to Sioux City and then on to Lamar's, Iowa. I'm sure you've all heard of Lamar's. Blue Bunny ice cream, they make Blue Bunny ice cream. Anyway. But you know what? I met Luann. And now my song is on her album. Do you know what I mean? So I'm just saying, there might be something going on. Just go. Things do happen when you go places. So I'll tell the Donald Trump story. It's not in my book. Duh. I'll tell the story. All right. Now I have to tell it, don't I? But keep your questions. So I worked with one of the things I brought to late night was political guests. And so pretty much everybody during the 90s and 2000s, anybody running for president, I booked them on the show, and also had the honor of booking the very first sitting president on the Tonight Show, which was Barack Obama on his 59th day in office. And that may not seem impressive or mean anything, but at that time, when we booked him, there had never been a sitting president on a late night show, not on Johnny Carson, not on any show, because it was considered undignified for a president to be on a lowly entertainment show. So we were able to sort of, break through barriers like that. So, but anyway, one of the people that I actually had quite a long-standing relationship with was Donald Trump. And I had first booked him in 1999. He was already a celebrity, and he was thinking about running for president on an independent party ticket as an independent. And he wasn't sure if he wanted to come out and to California to do it. Anyway, I called him up and said, "Look, Donald, if you wanna come out and if you're serious about running for president, you can do it on the Tonight Show." And he said, "Oh, I can do that?" And he said, "And I'm not paying for this anyway." He was going someplace to give some kind of a speech. So he worked it out that he came out, didn't pay for anything, appeared on the Tonight Show, and won in that party, beat Pat Buchanan. That name might not mean anything. And then, but he decided that he would not actually run as an independent because, quote, it's not going to lead to anything. I only do things that are going to be successful, so I'm not going to do it. But that was my first time. Subsequent to that, we booked Donald, for his books, The Art of the Deal, The Return of the Art of the whatever. We booked him for his books, and then also for a certain show called The Apprentice and Celebrity Apprentice. And The Apprentice and Celebrity Apprentice actually went on to become one of the most successful shows in the history of NBC. So Donald Trump was a big celebrity. I formed a relationship with Donald Trump because we knew each other over the course of, 10, 12, 15 years. And I'm not saying that Mary and I got invited to Mar-a-Lago, but if I wanted to talk to Donald, I had his number. I could just call him directly. And he actually turned out to be not a high-maintenance guest. He was very gracious. All of his family also appeared on The Apprentice. What is it, Ivanka? What am I? Who? Anyway, his wife Melania. They were all gracious. Everybody was gracious. But here's what I wanted to say about Donald Trump. I couldn't figure it out because he is the ultimate self-promoter. Whatever you think of Donald Trump, let's take the politics out of it. He is the ultimate self-promoter. I think we can all agree on that. But I noticed when he came on the show, he wasn't talking about The Apprentice or Celebrity Apprentice. He was talking about political issues. He was talking about how we were being ripped off by China. At the time, he was not a big fan of the Iraq War. He was talking about the exchange rate, how we were being ripped off, how the little guy was being ripped off. And he was talking about all these political issues, and I thought, okay, he's the ultimate self-promoter. He must know what he's doing, right? This guy must know what he's doing. Maybe this is somehow promoting The Apprentice. I don't get it, but that's what he's doing. It took me years to figure something out. He really wasn't promoting The Apprentice. He was testing his material for the day that he was going to run for president. Donald Trump had been doing a presidential run years before he ever did it. So I had all of this stuff. I had written a chapter about Donald Trump. And one day I'm listening to the radio, and I'm hearing these two political experts. And they said, the next election, I have to tell you, I am not going to give Donald Trump any coverage at all, because he would also run every year. You might remember, going back a number of presidential cycles, he would always sort of put his hat in the ring or say, "I'm very interested." And they said, he only says he's going to run because he's just promoting himself, and I'm not going to cover him. And the other guy said, "Yeah, I'm not either. I'm not going to cover Donald Trump. He's just promoting himself." So I go, I just wrote a chapter about this guy, and it looks like he's not going to get coverage. Nobody cares about Donald Trump. I have to take 20,000 words out of the book anyway. So it didn't get in the book. You don't always make the smart decisions, so let's take a break. So somebody asked me, could you tell me your name again? Somebody asked me about the situation we went through when Jay Leno was basically fired and Conan took over the Tonight Show. What was your name? Okay. Anyway, so I thought that was an interesting topic, if you do as well. But you might remember while Jay Leno was at the height of his career, maybe it's better to stand up here, I don't know. But when he was at the height of his career, he was essentially fired, and he was told that in 5 years, Conan O'Brien would be taking over the Tonight Show. And this happened when his ratings were at the very top. And by the way, the person who fired him is a man named Jeff Zucker. Oh, everybody knows that name. He has since run CNN into the ground, taking the ratings from here to here, after running NBC into the ground. They used to call it must-see TV when he took over. He did not come up with one show that was worth watching in all of his time at NBC. But of course, I love Jeff. Anyway, so Jeff Zucker actually used to be a friend of ours at the show. He worked in New York, his office was there, and he would often come out. Whenever he came out to Burbank, he would come in and visit with the writers and producers. He'd kick ideas around with us. Actually, a very likable guy until the day that he came in, skipped the writer's room, and went directly to Jay's office and said, Jay, I have a deal for you. You have 5 more years, and then after that, you're fired. Conan's taking over. And people don't know this, but Jay was fired. He was fired. It wasn't his choice. He was let go. So that day, Jay came in and looked very glum, because he often came in and sat with us in the writer's room. But he was very glum, and we said, well, wait a minute, Jeff Zucker here, you're not looking very happy. Jeff didn't come in and visit with us. What happened? And he said, you know, Jeff just fired me. And he had had a conversation with Jeff Zucker to the tune of, well, look, I'm number one, you know, why are you doing this? And he said, well, we just know that, you know, if we didn't replace you, that Conan would go someplace else. He was going to go someplace else, so we couldn't afford to let Conan go. And it's like, okay, where's Conan going? You know, where's he going to go? Letterman's on CBS, so where is Conan? What are you worried about? You know. So Jay said, okay, here's the deal. I'm number one by far. I've been number one for, at that time, 15 years. So how about this? How about if you keep me on until I'm number 2? Just keep me on as long as I'm number 1. How about that? And Jeff said, no, we already made the deal. I'm just telling you about it. So that's what happened. So Jay said, okay, I had a nice run, it's really good, except as time went on, as we went through the 5 years, and we continued to be number 1, and we continued to get better in the ratings, Jay was less and less happy about it. And it started showing up in his monologue jokes about the NBC executives. And anyway, as time went on, you know, Conan indeed replaced Jay, with the agreement that NBC came up with the idea that, okay, we'll put Conan on the Tonight Show, and Jay will be in prime time, so from 10 to 11. Now that's prime time. You know, you're up against programs like Lost, where they're paying $3.5 million per episode, and we're paying, you know, $700,000 a week to produce the Tonight Show. We're not even in the same league as that. And predictably, we didn't do so well in prime time, and I would say, predictably, Conan didn't do well in late night. After we had been number 1 for 15 years, Conan went from number 1 to number 2 in 2 weeks. He hemorrhaged 50% of the viewers. So it's not that I'm biased, or I'm not biased. And you may have your own point of view about this, and I respect that. That's my point of view. That it was a foolish decision, and as I always say about television executives, they don't know anything more than I do. Not that I'm specifying anyone, Jeff Zucker. They don't know anything more than I do, they just act like it. oh gosh, this is going on YouTube, isn't it? And so I'm kind of glad, actually. But anyway, so that's what happened. But stuff happens to you. I mean, that's the nature of the business. Things happen to you. And here's what happened. Why do you think they came up with the idea of putting Jay in prime time, of not letting him go? It's because Jeff figured out, wait a minute, in that 5 years that I gave him, he did better in the ratings. And here's the other thing that was going on that I knew personally. ABC was standing in the wings. And they were saying, Jay, we're offering you a show. They were saying it indirectly, but they were saying, because I had spies at ABC, who gave me a tour of the studio that they had built for Jay. So I knew what was going on. So they were standing in the wings to give Jay the late night show there. And NBC was, you know, I think Jeff Zucker was, uh-oh, what am I going to do now? So he came up with this ungodly, awful compromise of having us do primetime, which was a disaster, and Conan doing late night, which was a disaster. And by the way, what's Conan doing now? Oh, he's at TNT. Oh, what does he get? 300,000 viewers a night? They just cut his show back to a half hour. But nothing against Conan. No, and that's just, I'm sorry, I'm a little bitter about it. I'm just a little bitter about it. But, and I may not be giving you the answer that you're looking for, but from my point of view, it was a total mess, and it's totally Jeff Zucker's fault. Yes, Bob?
It bewilders me how a person like Jeff Zucker gets that job and keeps that job. How does that happen?
Well, not only how does he get the job and keep the job, but then he gets another job running CNN? How does that happen? I don't understand. But my comment about, you know, again, my comment about network executives, you know, they just act like they know what they're doing. Because nobody knows what's going to, this is how I started out the talk, and I'm going to, you know, do it. Nobody knows what's going to succeed. Nobody knows. Yes?
Yeah, Leonard, he had on his contract.
Yeah. That's right. He gave him 5 years, you're right. And during that 5 years, his ratings continued to get stronger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What happened, I thought that at this time that he just say he was going to retire, because, you know, the statement was saying that, oh, I'm just going to retire, and
Yeah.
But Jay Leonard stated at his last episode.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. He did say, I'm just going to retire, because he was trying to be a good guy and a team player and make the best of a bad situation. He did say that. And you know what? I don't think he should have said it, but he did. He did say that. Again, the thing about Jay, he's a real team player. And again, he was just trying to, you know, make it work. Yes?
I was wondering if you could describe the atmosphere within the writer's room with 20 writers expected to produce 100 jokes each session. Is there a lot of competitiveness or not? And when they need to hire a new writer, what kind of personalities or characteristics may they share in common, or do they look for diversity?
Actually, the way Jay hired writers is he didn't want to see them. He just wanted to see their jokes. And he would hire them based on the quality of their writing.
Did it turn off?
It did, yes. And that's a tip for anybody making a presentation. When there's an elephant in the room, acknowledge the elephant. You know, don't just go like, oh, nobody will know that this mic went off. So, did I push the button? You might have. Yeah. Testing? It works. Okay, well, so you know the level of my technical expertise. So where were we? Oops. I'll just talk loud. I don't. Oh, now it's okay. I won't touch that button anymore. Okay. What? I'm sorry. What?
I was wondering about the dynamics between the writers themselves, competitiveness there's commonality or diversity.
Yeah.
Especially when you need to hire someone new.
Okay, I think, here's what the problem is. Here's my limited expertise. I think the battery is dying. Yeah, so I'll just keep talking. I'll try to talk loud. But it's a good question. At a certain point, we weren't getting any women writers, so he just decided we need to hire some women to bring some, their point of view in. And I think that was a good decision, because if you remember some of the monologue jokes, it was like, potty jokes, boy jokes, dumb jokes. So I think when the women came in, we got rid of those stupid jokes. We got rid of some of the, jokes that when you get 20 guys in a room, they all become 18 years old. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I thought that was a good thing. Now, we had a wonderful diversity of writers. One of the writers was a rabbi. A number of the writers had come from the political world. They had worked with political candidates. Several of them had been lawyers. Some of the writers came from the toy industry. Some of the writers came from other TV shows. But there was a wonderful diversity. And again, I'm glad Jay, I know he had a process of this is going to be fair. I'm just going to look at the jokes. And that's how I'm going to hire it. But I'm glad he brought the women into the room. And it helped. It actually helped the comedy, because it was getting, really lowbrow. I thought, but I'm a little conservative. Yeah.
Who had to handle the feedback from the advertisers?
Oh, Jay actually did a lot of stuff himself. I'm sure it was the Jeff Zucker that would be taken care of at that level. But I don't think we had a bad relationship with our advertisers.
Oh, I didn't suggest that.
Oh.
Was there a person assigned to handle advertising? Did they have any input?
Oh, I see what you mean. No, that's a separate department. I thought you were, yeah. And it made me think of one of the advertisers, and I don't know if you remember Dave Thomas from Wendy's Restaurants. Well, Jay did a joke one time that Wendy's had taken a new campaign, and they had made Wendy their logo. Wendy herself became the logo, right? And Jay said, yeah, they got a new logo. They have Wendy herself. Well, she's still ugly. Well, Wendy was a real girl. It was Dave's daughter, right? Adopted daughter. So Wendy's called Jay and said, Wendy's is a real, oh, thank you. Wendy is a real girl, and Dave's really hurt by this. And Jay said, I'm really sorry about that. I can't undo it, but I don't know about Wendy. I'm just talking about the logo. And I don't know how to say this. Some people thought Wendy actually was ugly. I know a little bit about the situation because he's from Columbus, Ohio. And Mary's from Columbus, and we go back to Columbus. And would you say that's fair, Mary? I'm not saying Wendy is not good looking. I'm just saying some people had, so Dave was probably sensitive to it. So, yeah.
I think they need to finish in about 5 minutes.
Okay.
And, you were talking earlier about go places,
Yeah.
because something might happen.
Yeah.
So it might be fun, and I'm not tooting my own horn, but you might want to tell them how you got the job.
Oh. Yeah, you kind of are tooting your own horn. And you'll see what I mean. Actually, I meant to tell that story because it illustrates the main point. If there's only one takeaway, it's just go through whatever door you can go through. And just even if you go, I don't want to do this. I don't want to go to Lamar's, Iowa. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do it. Just do it. And here's the story. I had been a producer for NBC News in the Burbank Bureau, and then I went on to become the bureau chief for CNBC, and then after I set up their bureau, we were launching the CNBC network. Maybe you know that cable network. We were launching it, and after I set up the West Coast Bureau for CNBC, hired the reporters, set up the office, set up all the contacts, set up everything, then they fired me.
So, but I'm sure that's never happened to any of you, right? None of you's ever been fired. It was just me. No, but that's what happens in life. So here I am in the CNBC office, and they had at least given me the courtesy of saying you can hang out in the office and, you know, act like you have a job, because it's easier to get a job when you have a job, or pretend that you have a job. So one day, I noticed down the hallway, because I had been so busy, now I had time to walk up and down the hallway, that there was a new show moving in down the hallway, and that was The Tonight Show with Jay Leno. They had not gone on the air. They were 3 months out from going on the air, and I thought, wow, that's... And remember my relationship with Johnny Carson? I don't know whether to bow down to him or what. That was my feeling about The Tonight Show, because I'll go back to the first story I told about watching Johnny, the rite of passage. The Tonight Show was here, in my opinion, and I'm here. I'm as Steve might say, I'm just a news guy. I'm just a journalist. I'm just a news guy. And it would never have occurred to me to do what Mary suggested to me. I got on the phone. I told her about that Jay Leno had just moved in down the hall with this new show, and she said, that's great, what are you gonna do when we get off the phone? And I said, well, I'm gonna get back on the phone, I'm gonna look for work, and she said, yeah, you're gonna look for work, but not on the phone, you're gonna walk down there and introduce yourself. And I'm thinking, I can't do that, because immediately I see Johnny Carson in my head, and it's like, I'm not even in the same league as him. I just, you know, Mary, you don't understand, you don't get it, it's entertainment, I've never done entertainment, I'm just a lowly news, I'm just a news guy. I just write stories and produce stories for NBC News. And she said, no, I think you should really do that. And I won't make it long, because she always says I tell this story too long. So I'll just cut to the chase. So every hour she would call me on the, what kind, have you been down there? No. The next hour, I know you've been there, I'm sure you have. What kind of a guy is Jay Leno? No. Finally, it's like 4:15, she calls and she says, so, don't tell me you haven't been down there. I said, well, you know what, I'm going down there first thing in the morning. I'm going down there. First thing in the morning. She said, really? Did you want to come home for dinner? You tell me, good choice. Okay, well that puts a new spin on it. And I'm thinking, okay, what's going to be more intimidating? Going down to this show that I'm terrified, actually terrified. I'm scared out of my gourd because I think I'm out of my league. Or going home and facing Mary. I went down to the office. I walked in there. I didn't even know what to apply for. And I said, what should I apply for? I'm just a news guy that's what I do. And they said, well, apply for a writer, apply for a producer. So I fill out the forms, and now it's 5 minutes to 5. The receptionist says, congratulations to you. I said, what do you mean? I said, I got the job? What? She said, no. We're closing out the applications at 5 p.m. You're the last person to have applied. And as I'm walking out the door, the executive producer, who I didn't see, came running out of her office and said, where do you think you're going? She said, I just looked at your paper. I want to talk to you. I'm looking for a journalist. I'm looking for a journalist. Right? I didn't see that coming. Right? And 2 days later, I am shaking hands with Jay Leno. Right? Easiest job I ever got. Hardest job I ever did, but it was the easiest job I ever got. And that's how I got the job, and I recommend to you, go through any door that opens.
Yeah, and listen to your wife.
You just
And listen.
prove the old adage, behind every great man stands a great woman.
Yeah,